Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 76, recording on Thursday, April 17th. I am here at the TCO Performance Center in Eagan, Minnesota. As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're doing that, please hit that subscribe button below. Hit the like button. It helps us out. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you get podcasts, you can follow us, and we really appreciate that. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the Vikings general manager, spoke today. It was not the most electric of press conferences, but always enjoy listening to his thoughts about draft strategy and all of that. Really fun guest for you today. His name is Paul Lambert. You guys know him as Meatsauce. He is on KFAN, the Power Trip Morning Show, obviously a legend in the sports media realm in this town, but big draft guy, has been thinking about this thing a lot. So I thought I'd have him on to talk about what he wants to happen, what he hopes will happen, how he'll react if certain avenues end up happening. Always a fun conversation with Sauce, and appreciate him hopping on. As always, this show is presented by First Resource Bank. That's a member FDIC bank in the local area. They've got branches all over the place. My favorite is the one on Washington Avenue near Trader Joe's in the North Loop. Christy at the front desk is a gigantic Vikings fan, so while she hooks me up with all of the information I need regarding my account, we can talk about what the Vikings are going to do at 24. But please go check out First Resource Bank. Their information is in the description below. And if you missed it, got stories all over the place. The Athletic did a lengthy mailbag on Thursday. We'll be loaded next week. Mock draft, final one, big board with some names to just keep your eyes on, and much, much more, obviously, into Thursday night and Friday night and Saturday, and I can't wait for it at all. Let's get in to this conversation with Sauce. I hope you enjoy it. Had a great time with him, as always, and here's Paul Lambert. All right, Sauce, welcome to the show. How are you, man?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm good. I just finished up a Kwesi Adofo-Mensah press conference, watched a little Pat McAfee on this fine Thursday afternoon, and we're about a week away from the draft. So I want to have you on. I want to know what you want to happen. I mean, that's really the goal of this show right here, is to get, have the fans feel what would be a good draft night for you. How does that sound? I mean, I just want to know where your head's at about a week out from this thing.
I appreciate you having me on. Thanks a lot, man. This is great. I'm honored to be on. I was talking about 3 hours ago with Ben Lieber about basically the same thing, and that's the beauty of the lead up to the draft, with it being a week from right now. And it's weird because I said this to Lieber, and I wonder how you feel about it, but like, as a lifelong Vikings fan, every draft year, other than when they took Randy Moss, which is the greatest draft the Minnesota Vikings have ever had, you always in the back of your head say to yourself, I think we're going to find a way to a quarterback. You saw that when they had the run on the picks a couple years ago. I think Zimmer's last year, and the Tampa took Kyle Trask, so then the Vikings took Kellen Mond, right? So like that stuff happens. Like, maybe we'll take a third-round quarterback, somebody we can stash behind Kirk Cousins and move on, right? Then you saw years where they never took one because, whether you believe it or not, it's my opinion, Kirk Cousins didn't want a rookie backup, right? He didn't want any competition, and whatever. If that's how he works, I'm not going to judge it, but maybe you can win more than one playoff game, but that's a whole different argument. But, like, I don't know, because, like, They spent, $300 million in the offseason, so they've got their 2 tackles. They've got some depth at defensive line. They're going to get their all-pro left tackle back, hopefully right away. I think the only glaring need, but it isn't even a glaring need on the offensive line, is the left guard. But Blake Brandel, I guess, was fine. I'm not going to lie to you and be like, God, I've watched every snap Blake Brandel's ever had. But I just don't know. I think the positions you can rule out at 24 is quarterback. They're not going to take a quarterback. I would be shocked if they took a defensive end. That's probably about it. If they found some linebacker they like, then maybe. If I'm not smart enough. I'm just like an offensive guy, but like, I know how football works, but like, if they take some linebacker that they think can be somebody that they can use and whatever they run, fine. But I think the one position that I really would be, that I think is what they're looking for, is left guard. But I think is what's the beauty of this draft is almost every single offensive lineman that's going to go in the top 50 can play guard or tackle. Some can play center. I think Kelvin Banks, if he's available at 24, which who knows? We never know. Like no one thought a year ago that Atlanta was going to take, Michael Penix. They did. There's always like 3 or 4 surprises. If Kelvin Banks is there from Texas, their left tackle, they could move him to guard, right? If Gray Zabel, who's played about every position on the line, he'd be your starting left guard, and you'd have one of the best offensive lines in football. So I don't know. They need corners. If you want to believe the Asante Samuel thing, who knows if maybe there's some way that what Jalen Ramsey's cut from Miami and he's all of a sudden available. That'll, I think, dictate a lot on Thursday. If they go offensive line, I think they feel that they have maybe another cornerback move, but also safeties and available. Wide receiver, I think they were in the Cooper Kupp market. If Matthew Golden is there, that's not a no. I think if who's the other one? I can't think of off the top of my head.
Igbuka, maybe?
Yeah, the kid from Ohio State. He might be an option. None of us thought they'd take Jordan Addison, so they took Jordan Addison. So basically, I mentioned every position possible, but punter and kicker.
Yeah, well, it was interesting today listening to Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, and he talked for 15 minutes. And these pre-draft press conferences, as you know,
I've been to all of them.
I mean, it's just word jargon. Yes. I mean, it was like some of the best word concoctions, constructions, paragraphs. And shit. Like, I went through the audio before we started recording this. I'm like, my head was spinning because it was 15 minutes of something but nothing. But one of the interesting things I thought he did say is he talked about like 2-year time horizons. So thinking about things from like a 2-year ahead window, or really the current year and then 1 year ahead. So it got my mind thinking of like, okay, for the next two years, what positions, I mean, would you really focus on? I mean, receiver, Jordan Addison is still going to be on his rookie contract for the next 2 years. Running back, I mean, you have Aaron Jones under contract for 2 years. Jordan Mason's also going to be under contract for 2 years. I'd say, I mean, it brings you back to the positions that you discussed. I mean, first and foremost, left guard and interior offensive line, which we've talked about ad nauseum here locally, to me is also, I mean, it remains probably the leader in the clubhouse, if you will, for positions that they target. But I think also as part of that is if you get a versatile player, like you just mentioned, in terms of how all of these prospects tend to be, the Kelvin Bankses who could kick outside, the Gray Zabels who could move to center or move outside, they could potentially be your right tackle in the future, potentially, depending on what happens with Brian O'Neill. And I say that knowing Kevin O'Connell freaking loves Brian O'Neill. I've loved getting to know Brian O'Neill. The front office loves him, but his contract only runs through 2026. So you have to give yourself certain outs. I'll ask you and we'll just stick on like the left guard situation. I mean, if draft night happens and 24 is there and a Gray Zabel is the pick or a Tyler Booker from Alabama, like, is that just a win to you? Are you going to sleep Thursday night just feeling phenomenally about that being the situation?
Yeah, it's weird because last year was about the best it's ever been, right? They got a quarterback. They didn't have to give up. As you and I talked about, and I texted you and everybody I know way too much to ask the same stupid 3 questions over and over again. But I'm addicted to it. I love it. I love it. There's 3 things in this world I love. My wife, my son Louie in the NFL draft, top there, right? And my job and Chris Hockey, and that's about it. Maybe my sister. Okay, about 6 things. But like last year they nailed it. It's revisionist history, but I think they wanted Drake May. They couldn't get New England to bite on 11 and 23. So they sat and they waited. And as much crap as Kwesi has taken for how bad he has been with some of these drafts, last year he played it perfectly. He didn't move because he had to move. He knew, and it's turned out to be the biggest compounding mistake the Giants have ever made. They didn't take a quarterback. He just waited and did it, right? The difference with this year is when you look at what they have at pick 24, if they take an offensive lineman, I would be pumped. And I think because of the lasting impression we have as Vikings fans, the last game we saw, you were there, was watching that Los Angeles Rams front four just kill the Vikings interior and the tackles, because they were, the Cam Ward was, or not Cam Ward, the left tackle. Cam Robinson was your left tackle, whatever. He got paid, but it doesn't matter. But that was a bad offensive line, and you were there immediately after the game. O'Connell called it out, and Kwesi called it out, right? So you knew that. So they paid a ton of money for a right guard. So that is their plan to keep him upright. I would be pumped. Gray Zabel, I'd be pumped for. Donovan Jackson, I would be pumped for. Tyler Booker would be great. I'm not smart enough to know if Tyler Booker could play in the scheme that they play, but he's a huge human being. I'd be fine with either of it. And I think the fans would too. I think the fans realize that we have to get stout up front to be able to protect this quarterback and run the offense they want to run. Fans will be pumped either way, because it's the closest thing we have to any kind of game in about 6 months.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's the idea, though, of having Christian Darrisaw, Tyler Booker, Gray Zabel, Donovan Jackson, Ryan Kelly, Will Fries, Brian O'Neill as your offensive front for the young quarterback, plus the run game, which I know they want to focus more on this upcoming year. I mean, it is I mean, you've been here forever. Like, yeah. I can't imagine an offensive line in recent history. If you plug a player in who could be stout like that at left guard, I can't imagine an offensive line that would make you feel as good as this one would make you feel in the past. I mean, I don't know, at least probably 7 years. Like, when would be an offensive line that would you?
The 09 line was great.
Sure, so 16 years ago.
Yeah, the 98 offensive line is one of the best offensive lines played. But to your point, Alec, I've watched, and I don't know why I tell people this, but the first draft I ever watched is the 98 draft. And it was the greatest thing I ever saw because of just the drama of it. You saw Randy Moss, the best player in college football, fall to the Vikings at 21. It was literally, and this is probably a preposterous statement, it was life-changing, the draft. It just was, because I'm obsessed with it. I love it. My wife's so tired of me talking about it and recording all these SportsCenter special mock drafts. My point, though, is we've seen these GMs throughout all the GMs we've had here. Rick Spielman could not draft an offensive lineman to save his life. Matt Khalil was fine, but that's the pick you had to make. You go through Willie Beavers. All these guys that they've picked up are gone in a year and aren't in the league. He was terrible at drafting offensive linemen. So the Vikings had to kind of recoup, and, Kwesi was brought in, and they've found a way to, they paid money. Brian O'Neill was great. He kind of fell in their lap, and I just think that that's what they need, and they know that. It stings them as much as it stings us how bad that last game with. I think the fans would be pumped with whoever they plug and play at left guard, and I would guess, and from what I've heard, is I think Gray Zabel is their target, but we'll see.
Let's talk about a trade down, because we're talking about the fans being happy with whatever come draft night because it is the closest thing they have to a game, and they probably would prefer this than watching the Minnesota Twins, which seemingly nobody is watching this time of year. And you're wearing the hat, which I give you credit for the folks watching on YouTube. I mean, I know it's a Minnesota, but I mean, with this Twin season thus far, I see your tweets and I'm just feeling for you, so I give you respect for still wearing the hat. But as far as a trade down goes, I mean, I started covering this team in 2022 right before the season. So I did not experience that draft night of trading down from 12 to 32 and drafting the 4 picks where only one of them is remaining on the team in Brian Asamoah. I did experience last year where they trade up from 23 to 17 for Dallas Turner, which is still a move that looms very large atop this draft when you only have 4 picks and when he only played 300 snaps last year. But, I mean, part of me wanted to have you because the trade down is going to be fascinating. If it were to happen, I mean, you're going to be probably at the draft party. If not, you're going to be with your son and your wife tuned in and locked in. But how have you thought about the trade down, just given the recent history and just kind of envisioning what you want Thursday night to be?
So I think the thing when I look at it, Alec, is sure they have to trade down, but I think when you get into this is the Vikings moved all those picks to get 23, then they moved all those picks to get up and get Dallas Turner. Okay, so like it's all about like compounding mistakes, right? If that's considered a mistake, I'm not calling Dallas Turner a mistake, but you can't just keep peddling these picks to try and make up for the lack of picks you have. With my point being is, when you look at the draft board and you have the Houston Texans right behind you, you have Kansas City, you have Philly. I think it's every team behind you except for Washington. I think every team behind you except for Detroit needs offensive line. So
the Rams potentially, they could be in the market for a tackle. I'd say Buffalo's line's pretty good, but yeah, I mean, it's most of them.
Only one, and maybe Detroit, but like Kansas City for sure does. So to your point, I think the two things you have to watch on draft night is who's available between 21 and 23. And I know that's a 3-point swing, but that's something to look at, because if you're the Packers and you say to yourselves, they like to move, right? They like to move around. That's kind of their bit. That's like the only thing they do. They don't sign free agents, but they move around on the draft board, right? And they take weird things. But if you're the Packers at 23 and Gray Zabel or one of those guys is sitting there, you 100% open up the phone lines to Kansas City, who desperately needs offensive line help, right? They're the worst version of what happens when you don't have a good offensive line and you don't have a good interior and you're banged up by injury. So then you worry that Green Bay could move back and let one of these teams come up in front of the Vikings. The issue they have, though, Alec, is the Vikings don't have any kind of ammo to even get to like 22 unless they start using next year's stuff, but then you just compound.
Can't be doing that
mistake, right? So I think you can. It's obviously possible, but then you get into like these kind of top 35 guys. Because let's say if you're at 24 and Kansas City calls you and they move up and they want to take, Gray Zabel, and you're like, well, all right, well, we can't. They're going to give us 31. They're going to give us their second round pick, and maybe they give us whatever it is. I don't have the Jimmy Johnson chart, but they give you a fourth round pick in next year's draft, and you say, that's too good to move up. But you're going to then lose the Donovan Jacksons. You're going to then lose the Tyler Bookers. I'm with Ben Lieber, who said it on our show, The Power Trip, all the time. I think you just stay at 24. I think you find a way to move 97 around a little. Unless you're blown away and you don't have to go too far back, then maybe you do it. But if you're just doing it to do it, don't do it. Because, they did it in 2022. They should have just stayed and taken Kyle Hamilton. The whole thing would be changed. It would all be different. But I think don't do it to do it. Do it if you get like a great deal. Stick and pick and take your guy at 24 and let's move on and let's have, the fun with all the stuff that goes on at Vikings.com and you guys do at The Athletic. Let's do all that stuff and let's move on and watch the Wild game on Friday and wait for pick 97.
That's where I think they just have to set very hard barriers where
Correct.
If these players are here, we're taking them. If this cluster of players is still here and we can get back 4 spots or what have you and still make sure, but it's like we have to, in my opinion, the way I would be strategizing would be if I have these players that if they are there at 24, we're just doing it because we're not risking kind of that move. And I will say too, like just listen to Kwesi Adofo-Mensah talk today, it felt like he said 2 things that were interesting to me. It's about being proactive and not reactive. So that kind of aligns with that of being setting very hard barriers of this makes sense and here's why. And then the other aspect he talked about was impact, like making sure they have impact. So it's not just having picks and players just to have them. It's about ensuring that you find impact in this draft. And I do think it's a little silly. Like I've heard some people be like, this draft's going to be a really referendum on Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. It's like you only have 4 picks. There's only so much of a referendum kind of that it can be. But for me, I mean, to trade down, let's just say the Giants or the Browns at 33, 34, they want to come up and get a quarterback. So you're moving down 9 or 10 spots. You better have a cluster of players whether it's interior offensive line, interior defensive line, where those grades are just the exact same. Where if you get one or the other, everybody's going to be bought in regardless. Otherwise, if you feel even a smidge more convicted in one player, it would be really hard for me to move down, even if I can then get a target later. For me, you're just playing a very dangerous game, in my opinion, especially if there are players like a Gray Zabel or like a Kelvin Banks or like a Derek Harmon, interior defensive tackle, who are there at 24 to move back just in hopes that nobody snipes you, leaps up in front of you. To me, again, it's just a very treacherous kind of, you're in treacherous waters trying to operate that way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing, as you were saying, is you run into just, there's too many, what's the word I'm looking for? There's too many factors that go into it, right? Because even if you look at it and you go, all right, we're going to go back to, what do the Bills have? 29?
30, 29, 30.
29, 30. You go back 4 or 5 picks, or as you said, right? But like, all of a sudden you're going, man, we may have got like a 3rd round pick to move back 6 spots, but we have the Texans, their number one need is offensive line. You're just, unless we've been reading it all wrong, and we think, maybe they think all these offensive linemen are terrible. And maybe the safety from Georgia is their guy. Maybe the corner from Texas is their guy, or the corner from East Carolina?
Yeah, Siobhan Ravel. I'd be pretty shocked, but
yeah. But you know what I mean? Like that, it'd be weird because like then there's too many teams behind you, and as Lieber and I broke down, you can hear that show later tonight on KFAN. The problem you have with the offensive line picks is 13 on. All those teams need offensive line. Miami, Seattle, Tampa,
Cincy.
Cincy. The Pack, I don't know about the Pack, but like the Chargers don't because they have a really good, but even like Denver, like you open yourself up to all these things. I think you just wait to 24. If there's like 4 or 5 guys there that you're like, my God, I couldn't believe we had a weird run where like 3 quarterbacks went and now we have, then maybe. But I think you wait at 24 and you take one of your top offensive linemen or one of the corners and you move on.
So you're okay. I mean, in that sense, okay, then you're picking at 97 and you're picking at 139 or whatever. Say you trade back or from 97 to 120 or something like that. You're okay. I mean, because those picks are real flyers now. Like those 4th round, 5th round. I mean, you're throwing some long range darts at that point. You're okay with that as long as you feel like you got your guy who you plug in to solidify the interior at the top.
I'm a quality over quantity guy, right? Like, if you come out of this draft, I think that's the right term. It doesn't matter. Corey's not here to correct
No, that was.
If you get, let's say, just so we put a name to it, if you get Tyler Booker at 24 and you come back at 97 and you get there's that Notre Dame safety at 97, right?
Sure.
Fine, great, cool, right? They close out day 1 with a guard, and they close out a guy that they can mold into a safety who Harrison Smith, if it's the kid from Notre Dame, would love to, mold and have it. This is, I would guess, Harrison Smith last year, right? But I think the other thing that maybe you know this answer is everybody keeps talking about how Asante Samuel Jr. is a name that keeps popping up, or Jalen Ramsey. But if they go offensive line at 24, they need more depth at corner. So there's got to be some name out there or in this draft in the later rounds that they like that they can plug and play, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think at cornerbacks, it's a very interesting situation because you could tell from the comments that Kevin O'Connell made at owners' meetings how much that Brian Flores and this team believes in what Isaiah Rodgers can be alongside Byron Murphy Jr. And I also think, I mean, yes, Jeff Okudah has struggled mightily at times in the past. He's navigated a lot of injuries, but this is a coordinator who knows how to maximize a player's skill set. And with Jeff Okudah, that's probably being on the short side of the field, being very physical. And then there's belief still in what Mekhi Blackmon could be and what Dwight McGlothern could be. So I feel like they're very comfortable. Now there are players they like. Noel Williams from Cal is a guy I believe who had 7 interceptions last year. Really like instinctive player. But he's probably going to go in that 70 to 90-ish range. So is he going to be there in the third? I mean, that's where the difficulty with the Vikings picks in this draft is you just wish you'd have another bullet or two within that like 30 to 80 range, because there's a lot of potential starters in that range. Now they don't. And so I do think there are some names later on in the draft. We're talking 5th round, 6th rounds of, guys with potential big upside, tall players, long players, instinctive guys, kind of like in the similar mold to a Kyrie Jackson, who can play some press, who can play zone. But it's again, when you're taking a 5th round cornerback, it's a flyer, and sometimes those guys hit, and they're the Tyreek Woolens of the world, and sometimes you miss horribly. But it segues into a good conversation, because really, besides interior offensive line, for me, I've said, from what I know, I would be surprised if there weren't an interior offensive lineman taken, an interior defensive lineman taken, a receiver taken, and a running back taken. For me, it sounds like if there's a position that you really kind of want to see besides interior offensive line, it's probably corner for you.
Yeah, the other one that I like to ask and talk about is, it's such a copycat league, right? Like, you see some of these now, the running back is now in vogue again. And my guy who I've worshipped since the first time I saw him on ESPN, Mel Kiper Jr., right? Don't overdraft running backs. Don't take one in the first round. But Ashton Genty, he's not going to be there at 24. That's not my point. But like how do you say it? Omarion Hampton?
Omarion Hampton, yeah.
Omarion Hampton, he might be there at pick 24, right? But if he is running back something like, I know, like, the Vikings are in this, and this is way before your time, but the Denny Green mentality. You take the best player available, doesn't matter what position they play, because every team needs good football players. Is Hampton a guy, if he's there at 24, I don't think he gets past Denver, but, like, is that a guy? And another name that, because weird things happen, man. That's the beauty of this draft. There's people that none of us have talked about where you're like, what? Who's that? And all of a sudden, like, we're sitting here and Derek Harmon goes 10th to the Bears, or 11th, right? Like, stuff like that happens. So I think my question is basically, like, when you look at this and you break down all of the names that you think can be there at 24, is there a name that you think or you've heard that would shock you that would be there at 24, that they would basically go, my God, this is the guy we have to take? Is there like a Matthew Golden? Like, is there a wide receiver or a skill position that you think that they aren't really talking about, but it would be somebody where you'd go, my God, I didn't think he'd be there. We have to take him.
Yeah, look, and I've said this on the podcast, Omarion Hampton, for me, like, the tape is maybe the most fun I've watched of anybody in this draft. Now, Ashton Genty is kind of a whole different deal, but Hampton is a joy to watch. And had the Vikings not acquired Jordan Mason, I'd probably give the odds a little more likely. But I would say, first, I think Omarion Hampton will already be off the board. Yeah. Second, if he's there, it would just be hard, even though that would probably definitely be the best player on the board or what have you. It'd be hard when you already you've agreed to pay Aaron Jones for 2 years, and then you've acquired and signed Jordan Mason into the future. It'd be difficult to add another running back to that. For me, the answer to the skill player question would probably be, if it's like, let's just say, like, worst comes to worst, and it's like Banks is off the board, Zabel's off the board, Derek Harmon's off the board, Booker's off the board.
Which is all possible.
Yeah, right, which is all possible. And so the Vikings are looking at it, and no one wants to trade up. For some reason, in the fake world that we're drawing right now, and the Vikings don't have, there's not a lot of outs. I wouldn't, like, Malachi Starks is definitely an interesting player. Yeah. I'm just not all the way in believing that they would pick a safety that high in this draft. I just
especially
don't.
For Georgia.
Yeah. That would be. It would be extremely tough. For me, the player that I would probably say skill-wise would be like Emeka Egbuka. That's probably way higher than the consensus board or whatever has him, but I mean, that's a guy who everything you hear about him in terms of what he is behind the scenes, in terms of his smarts, his ability to read coverages on the fly, what he would provide to that receiver room, kind of like ability to block and insert. I mean, that guy, for me, it'd be a very fun fit. I just don't see receiver right now being, I mean, again, if I go back to the 2-year time horizon, thing that Quasidofo mentioned, Jordan Addison's still going to be under contract for 2 years. The player who's not, probably, unless the Vikings were to re-sign him, is Jalen Naylor, who's in the final year of his rookie contract. Yeah. That's where I feel like receiver is still in play, because if Jalen Naylor repeats the season he had last year, some team's going to pay him a pretty good penny in free agency. And so you need another separator, field stretcher. And that, to me, is another option, like at 97. But I mean, if worse comes to worse and the Vikings can't trade back and they're picking at 24 and Igbuka is there, I mean, to me, that'd be an interesting one. Golden also might fit because he can separate and all of that, but Igbuka would provide kind of a different avenue. We've talked a lot interior offensive line. We talked some skill. Let's say it's Derek Harmon, the interior defensive tackle from Oregon at 24. They stick and pick him. Your reaction to that would be what?
I think it'd be fine. I don't know a lot about him. That's on way. Oregon football's on way too late for me, right? Especially their home games.
And with Louis, I mean, I don't know how you. I mean, at this point,
Louis. The beauty of Louis is if there was a scouting report of my son, is he's great. He's in great shape. He moves his legs a lot, and he sleeps about 11 hours a night. He sleeps through the night. We are blessed. It's mostly my wife. My wife has done such an amazing job with him in the 4 months we've had him, but he sleeps through the night. But I don't know. I mean, Derek Harmon would be fine. I know, like, there's a lot of people that say they signed some great defensive tackles, but they're all older. I would be fine with that. I just think I'm so set on offensive line.
Interesting. That's what it sounds like listening to you.
Yeah, I just think that they're going to find a way that Gray Zabel's their guy, because they know they can move him all over. He played at North Dakota State. I really like Tyler Booker. I really like Donovan Jackson, because when Simmons got hurt, Donovan Jackson went to the outside, so these are just good football players. I'd take any four Calvin Banks, of course, any four of the offensive linemen. That's who I would be. I'd be totally fine. I'll be pumped either way, right? I just want them to pick somebody. I don't want our guys and friends of ours that are going to be there. I don't want you and Chip Scoggins and all those other guys sitting there going, what? They traded to 34.
Why didn't Chip just catch a?
No, I love Chip, but I don't want Chip. I want Chip to be as peaceful and as happy as he possibly can be, because there are not many nicer people than Chip Scoggins.
He's the nicest ever.
Yes, he's A1. I love Chip Scoggins. My point, though, is I don't want you guys sitting there all day. That's boring. And that's like we run into when Nordo and I don't know if we will this year, because the Wolves play, but like there's been years past where Nordo and I do these outstanding, and what I mean outstanding is Nordo does 90% of the legwork, but we're sitting there and it's like, oh, cool, the Vikings pick at 87. Well, they just traded to 105 3 hours. So, like, I don't want you guys to sit there. It's a fun night. The energy's there. I know the Vikings and the Wolves do such a great job with, they probably, have a nice feedback.
Oh yeah, they give us a great spread. It's fun. It's impressive. Fun night.
We want a player. That's all I want. Is if they do trade, don't move out of the first round. I'm going to watch every pick. I'm going to sit here on Friday night when my wife is watching the Wolves game. I'll be watching most of the draft. I love it. It's only once a year. I just want them to stick and pick.
And if they trade out of the first round, then what? You're going to be
I'll be mad, but I hope that they get value for it. I hope they get a couple of day 2 picks. Obviously, they'd get whatever pick they got to swap with 24, but whatever the ancillary picks they get, I hope are multiple day 2 picks. They got to get a couple more picks if they move in the top 75.
That's fair. Is there any other like lower level prospect you just love?
That's a really good question. I like Tate. Is it Tate Rutledge?
Rutledge, the Georgia offensive lineman.
He's just kind of cool looking. I like him. I like the Notre Dame safety. I think
you like Watts.
I like Watts. It's Xavier Watts. I think
Watts.
He'd be really good. That's about it. I masquerade myself as a draft expert. I really just love the first round and the second round. Like, I'll get into it. I'll know who they are. I read up on it. I do all these simulation mock drafts, which is so dumb that a 42-year-old father does, but I just love it. I've loved it, and I give my wife credit. She knows how much I love it. She plays along, and it's going to be great. She's sick of me talking about it. She came down and she was showing me something from the show The Valley on Bravo. And in my head, I'm like, I don't care. But I do care because she cares about when she pops on. We have 14 Sports Center specials in our DVR that I have to watch. So it's a wonderful thing that is marriage. But like, yeah, it's I can't wait. I love it. I read all your coverage. You do a great job.
No, that was well laid out. Well, I appreciate you hopping on. We missed Nordo. We were gonna do. I kind of wanted he and you. We'll make that happen at some point here shortly. But I appreciate you taking the time. It's gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to hearing your reaction, however it goes.
I can't wait. I'll be on Twitter, probably tweeting something I shouldn't.
As always, thanks, Sauce. Appreciate you hopping on. And that'll do it for episode 76 of the Alec Lewis Show. Appreciate you guys being here and listening to my conversation with Sauce. It's always a joy to kick some ball around with him. That was like a soccer reference or something, but just roll with it. If you're new here and watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. It helps us out, and we always are grateful for it. If you're listening to Apple, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you get podcasts, you can follow us. And that stuff is appreciated as well. We will be back next week. I'm doing a show Monday with one of the premier draft experts in the industry. I'm going to give him my mock draft. May ask him for his own Vikings mock draft. And that'll be very fun to kind of unveil on the show. Really looking forward to catching up with him. And then we will be raring to go on draft night next Thursday and Friday. I'm going to be at the Vikings facility, but capable of being adaptable and going live, and we'll react as much as we can. So stay tuned for that. Some more information, details about this show coming down the pipe. So just stick with us. 76 episodes in and only going up from here. That is the hope. That is what I have to tell myself. And hopefully that's the case. But that'll do it for this episode of the Alec Lewis Show. Have a phenomenal weekend. Hopefully the weather is good, and we will talk to you guys very, very soon.